Everyone thinks that buyers in the indie market want exactly the same thing, but the truth is where buyers are coming from and where they're actually moving to, it can really be a surprise to people. And before you make a move, whether you're selling, buying, relocating, you need to know exactly what's happening in the entire Indianapolis market. So in the video today, here's what we're gonna cover. We're gonna talk about the surprising markets that are actually sending a lot of buyers over to Indianapolis, some of the suburbs and the city neighborhoods that a lot of those people relocating from other metros are actually moving to, and the lifestyle trade-offs from the schools or the walkability and how that ultimately is really driving all of these moves, and then how it affects the affordability in a lot of different places around Indianapolis. I'm Jason Compton, your local real estate expert. I work with buyers and sellers moving in and around the Indy Metro every single week. And the trends that we're gonna talk about in this video help to shape everything that we do. So let's get into it. So let's take a look at some of those markets that are actually driving a good number of buyers into the Indianapolis market. So we've got Lafayette, Indiana. We've got Washington, D.C. We've got Houston, Texas. We've got Los Angeles, California. We've got San Francisco, California. We've got New York. We've got Seattle, Washington. We've got Atlanta, Georgia. We've got Reno, Nevada. And we also have San Diego, California. Those are markets that statistically are producing buyers for Indianapolis. But even though we've got a lot of people relocating from different metros around the country, it doesn't amount to statistically a huge number. It's only about 0.59% of all the buyers around and inside of Indianapolis that come from some other place. But a stat that actually is really a whole lot more significant is that 29% of all buyers across the entire country, they're actually looking at places in other metros outside of their own. So as an example, you look at Washington, D.C. and also New York, you often have professionals in those cities that are seeking a little bit more space and more affordability. And then a lot of California buyers, they're looking for the same thing. They're looking for more affordability and oftentimes more of a Midwest lifestyle. People coming from Seattle, they might want a similar vibe, but they're also looking for affordability. When you look at the median home sale price around Indianapolis and you look over in the Seattle area and it's pushing $800,000 or so, about $790,000. That's a dramatic difference between the two. And then Houston and Atlanta buyers, they're trying to get away from super sprawling metro areas that are just incredibly large and incredibly spread out. So they're also trying to get away from some of the super hot summers, especially in a place like Houston, and something a little bit more temperate that you're gonna find in the Midwest. So once someone from another metro decides on Indianapolis or someplace around Indianapolis, where do they actually go? All right, so number one, it's not a big surprise, but a lot of people are moving to Carmel and Zionsville. So there you get the prestige, you get schools, you get a desirable lifestyle that a lot of people are looking for. The median price in Carmel is about $547,000 or so. And then if you look over in Zionsville, it's about $696,000. Now Carmel's right about where it was last year, so not much in the way of increasing in prices there, but Zionsville has increased quite a bit. It's about 20% up year over year. They're still the most expensive places to live around Indianapolis. Now, who we're seeing moving into those homes, you're gonna have higher income families, you're gonna have executives at companies. We're also seeing a lot of retirees that are downsizing into more manageable homes in Zionsville and Carmel. There are manageable homes, not just giant homes, through both of those places. And why they're popular is because they have top-rated schools. Both Carmel and Zionsville, they're definitely in that top 20 in the entire state public schools. There's a family-friendly type of lifestyle through there. Plus, the downtown areas in both those places are vibrant. There's a lot of culture in both of those places for not really being giant cities or towns. Carmel is a little over 100,000 and Zionsville is about a third that size, but it's fairly surprising how much they have going on in each of them, and it makes them incredibly desirable places to be. But the trade-offs is that, of course, your money doesn't go as far in those places, and there's limited inventory in those places. So oftentimes you're probably gonna make some trade-offs then in the home because you're choosing from what's available. You're not tripping over choices services through there. And that, of course, creates more competition. Next two would be Fishers and Noblesville. And when you look at the median home sale price in both of those places, they're much more affordable than what you're going to find in Carmel and Zionsville. Fishers has a median home sale price of about $432,000, and that's actually up about 0.5% year over year, so not dramatically up. And then when you look at a place like Noblesville, it's around $375,000 or so, and that's actually up about 4% year over year. So people are starting to catch on with Noblesville. Now, what we see with people predominantly moving in there, we have dual income families, we've got commuters, people that work within those cities, but of course also in Indianapolis too, and then a lot of move up buyers and some first time home buyers, which is not surprising because these are the most affordable ones that you can get into. And then the other reason why they're popular is because the schools there are also very strong. But the park systems and the variety of parks that you actually have in Fishers and Noblesville, it's pretty amazing and pretty surprising to people, the variety that you see. Now, if you want to see some of that variety, we actually put those into our exploration app. And using the app, you can begin to see some of the dramatic differences between a place like Noblesville and Fishers. Whereas you are just driving through, you may not pick up on some of those differences. So you can always reach out to us if you want access to that exploration app when you're coming to Indianapolis or any of the cities that surround it to explore a little bit to figure out which might fit your lifestyle the best. Now, some of the trade-offs that you might run into is that they are still growing. You're going to find some construction and you're going to find some congestion in certain parts of those cities. And the other trade-off that comes up an awful lot with people are HOAs. It is not impossible to find a neighborhood without an HOA, but it's a lot more common to find at least having an HOA. Now, the different levels of restriction and what you can and can't do, that can vary. Now, for people who are looking for new construction and different price points on this, Westfield is definitely a popular one where a lot of new construction is going on. And then also Whitestown on the north side. Median home sale price in Westfield, $501,000. And that's actually up several percentage points year over year. When you compare it to Whitestown, which is about $357,000, that's actually down about 3.6% year over year, which is a little surprising. It's definitely growing, but it's one of the places where you can get into some new construction and the inventory has begun to catch up with the demand. And who we're seeing buying in those places would be young families, or maybe it's a move-up home, but they absolutely want something that's new and as turnkey as possible. And what I mean by turnkey is that you can literally just unlock the door and move right in and move your stuff in, and you're pretty much good. You don't need to do anything to the house except for maybe paint a room or get some different colors in there, but that's really just about it. You also have places like Grand Park in Westfield, which is hyper youth sports focused, and a lot of people, a lot of families definitely want that kind of thing. They also want master plan communities, so they have amenities in their neighborhood. You don't have to go out to maybe a pool if you don't have one. Your neighborhood's going to have one. Maybe a basketball court or tennis court, could be a pickleball court at this point though. Now the trade-off can be, especially when you're looking at a place like Westfield and parts of Whitestown, is that if you work in Indianapolis, then you can run into a little longer commute. And that can add another 5 or 10 minutes onto your drive. You might have an easy way of getting there, but the mileage you can never really truly get around. Plus, they're still developing, they're still new, and there are parts that are more established, but there are more parts that aren't super well established yet. Next would be Brownsburg and Avon in Hendricks County to the west of Indianapolis. Brownsburg's median home sale price is about $333,000, and that's flat year over year. But Avon at $369,000 is actually down roughly 6.8% year over year. People that we're seeing there are families, and they don't want to lose those suburban perks that you're going to find in a lot of suburbs. Some of the benefits would be, again, really strong schools with Avon and Brownsburg. They rank up there inside of that top 30 easily, and actually even in the top 20 according to Index.com. You also have really easy downtown Indianapolis access through either I-74 with Brownsburg and also I-70 when you get a little further south of Avon. The trade-offs might be a little bit of congestion, especially in Avon, and you don't exactly have the same prestige as you do in a place like Carmel and Zionsville. And then where I am today on the south side in Greenwood, incredibly affordable. Median home sale price Greenwood is about $313,000, and that is actually up just over 10% year over year. In Greenwood, we do have a lot of families and a lot of first-time buyers. Not surprising because of the affordability and what you get with your money here. And in addition to places like this, they also have a tremendous amount of shopping. A lot of big box stores and a lot of typical things that you're gonna find across the country. Plus I-65 runs right through Greenwood and makes that commute into downtown Indianapolis. Wherever you are in Greenwood, it's pretty easy to get just about anywhere you wanna go. If you need to get to the north side, that's gonna be more of a trouble, and that could be one of the trade-offs where you work on the north side, you live in Greenwood, your commute is gonna be a little bit of a struggle. Plus there are places in Greenwood that are congested, and the north side gets a lot of the bad reputation for having a lot of traffic, and there is congestion there, and a lot of the complaining comes from the south side, and the south side is not immune to congestion. Going up and down US 31, straight through Greenwood, or portions of I-65, especially when you get to 465. It can get a little bit jammed up. Now I'm off to that place where you wouldn't have to drive as much, and you've got that more walkable type of lifestyle. I'm in Fountain Square right now, where the median price is $375,000, and that's up about 22% year over year. Wherever it is that you live, you can walk right out your door to a place like what's right behind me over here, fire truck blowing by over there. Upland Brewery right here behind me, which is a really cool place. It's been around a long time. There's a couple of coffee shops here right next to me. We've got live music in this area. You've got plenty of little restaurants. So you're still gonna need your car for certain things, but you can certainly walk from a lot of the neighborhoods that surround this truly near Fountain Square. But if you look in places like Meridian Kessler, Broad Ripple, those are really close together and further north from here, but they also have a really walkable vibe. Now, if you're looking in Broad Ripple, median price about $351,000, and that's actually up just a little bit, about 1.3% year over year. Meridian Kessler is about $474,000, and it's up about 0.8% year over year. And who we're seeing in places like this, young families who want a more urban type of vibe, or you've got young professionals, maybe in their 20s, 30s, even 40s and 50s, and they don't necessarily want that suburban life. And also places that you could get your first-time buyer, but you also have just places that are second buyers where you can move into from your starter home, maybe in the suburbs or another place in Indianapolis, and get a little bit more close to some of these urban centers, these cultural centers. But the trade-offs, of course, is that you're going to get into some older homes a lot of times. Like when I'm looking right down this street here, right next to Upland Brewery, a lot of older homes, which of course are gonna need some maintenance, you're gonna need some renovating, or you can get into a place like the one right here behind me, which is a super contemporary, much newer build. You can actually find a lot of new builds through places like Fountain Square. But what is it that's driving the choices beyond price? When you actually zoom in on what buyers around Indianapolis actually want, people want top schools and places like Carmel, Avon, Brownsburg, Westfield, Hamilton Southeastern. So many schools around the Indianapolis metro rank inside of that top 20 in the entire state. Almost anywhere around Indianapolis, the schools are almost 100% on their mind. And a lot of buyers will actually stretch their budget and make an extra effort to get into those places, those top schools, and they'll even sacrifice on the square footage of the house, or even it may be a house that's big enough, but maybe the yard or just different aspects of the house they're willing to give in on because they want to be in some of these really highly rated school districts. Next one is walkability and lifestyle. We hear often buyer wants some choice when they walk out their door, a fairly short walk to a place like this, like Fountain Square, which is mentioning, live music, got radio here behind me, and then a ton of restaurants as we go up the street here, up and down. So places like Fountain Square, Broad Ripple, Meridian Kessler, even over into Bates Hendricks, some places in downtown like Chatham Arch and along Mass Ave. Those are the places that can really offer you a true walkable type of lifestyle. But Indy, unfortunately, is still, like a lot of places, a really car-centric city. But you do still have these 15-minute cities where you can live in a place, maybe not right in the heart of this, but within a 15-minute walk of a lot of this, or maybe a 15-minute or less bike ride to all of this. The third is that balance of the perfect commute, or at least a reasonable commute and some space around their house. So places like Brownsburg, of course, when you get into Westfield on the north side, Greenwood, where I was on the south side, even further south than that, into Franklin, Indiana, you can get really a little bit more for your money as far as the space is concerned in a lot of cases, but balancing that with that reasonable commute is just wildly important to a lot of people. And why this matters is because there are a lot of people that want a yard or a bigger yard, and they want new construction a lot of times. So you're not gonna find just big, huge centers of new construction inside the city all that often. You're probably gonna have to go to some of these cities on the outskirts. And then speaking of that new construction, we definitely get a lot of themes, or one of the themes talking to people is that they want a new home, or certainly a newer home, meaning it was built maybe inside the last 5 years. Even to them, 10 years old, or especially 15 and 20, that's too old. They know those maintenance items are going to start popping up. So we, of course, would look at places like McCordsville on the east side, Westfield again on the north side, and we would look at places over on the west side, like a Brownsburg, or of course, when you get into Hancock County on the east side and Greenfield. And again, people want that turnkey type of experience, but they also want the modern pieces that go with new construction, like an open floor plan, or super energy efficient homes, or smart homes with smart features, and not have to worry about putting those in to a 30 or 40-year-old home. So that convenience is really a big deal. And the other thing too is that most of those places, or a Whitestown on the northwest side, those types of neighborhoods, new construction neighborhoods, are gonna come with HOAs. But that's okay to a lot of people, because that again ties into that convenience, where the HOA takes care of a lot of the things around the neighborhood, the common areas, the pool, the playground, the walking trails. They make sure all of that is definitely something that's really clean and nice to look at and experience living around. Now, the trade-off, of course, would be that you have fees associated with that. And whether you think they're expensive or not might depend on what your previous experience has been like, or where you're coming from. So you do have something that's not necessarily lording over you, but a certain set of rules that you have to abide by within that neighborhood as far as your house goes. Then that next theme is, of course, affordability and value, and where that shows up across all of Indianapolis, especially when you're talking about some of the coastal metros like around Los Angeles or San Diego or Seattle or New York or Miami. These are places where everything is really quite expensive. So when they look at Indianapolis, it doesn't seem like there is an expensive place to them. And if we're looking at an entire citywide median home sale price of about $255,000, they're just seeing value like crazy, because the national median home sale price is around $416,000. So that includes all of the metros around Indianapolis, the affordable, the non-affordable. So Indianapolis is still really pretty far below that national average. But of course, if you're from here, then you don't have that perspective, especially in places like Carmel and Zionsville, or in Meridian Kessler. But Carmel, Zionsville, when you're talking about median prices around $700,000, like in Zionsville, that just might seem absurd to you as far as value is concerned. So it's more really about figuring out which area gives you the long-term value that you're seeking without overspending. So at the end of all of this, buyers aren't always chasing square footage or price per square foot. Most people are really truly chasing a lifestyle, and whatever that lifestyle looks like to you, whether it's a walkable one or one that you want family friendly or noisier, like where I am right now in Fountain Square, that is what most people truly are looking for. But the good news about Indianapolis is that it has enough diversity in all of those different lifestyles to where a lot of people are gonna have some choices. Of course, wish lists, they don't always line up with reality that you're gonna find here in Indy. So what are some of the pain points and the challenges that some of the buyers are facing whenever they're trying to move here? Well, number one, if you haven't noticed, inventory is kind of tight. Right now we're sitting on about 1.7 months of inventory. And what that means is that if you had no other listing hit the market, then we'd be out of homes for sale in 1.7 months. And that's pretty fast. Usually we would consider a balanced market market, meaning it's not a seller's market, it's not a buyer's market. There's really no weight to either one. That's about 4 to 6 months worth of inventory. So we're still pretty far below that average right now. And that means some of these really desirable areas like in Carmel or Zionsville, even Fountain Square, some of these homes, or Broad Ripple, those homes typically sell pretty fast. And the more turnkey they are, the less work they need, they can definitely go fast. And multiple offers do still exist, even though we're well past COVID at this point. And if you're relocating, that fast pace is overwhelming to a lot of buyers. And you feel like you can't just take a week or 2 weeks to decide about where it is you want to be or what specific house you actually want to purchase and move on to. Then that second thing would be surprises about price. So Indy has this reputation for being incredibly affordable, but then a lot of buyers coming from even some of these really expensive metros, they get here and their money just isn't going quite as far as they thought it would. So when you look at that median home sale price around Indy of $255,000, that's not what it is. So when you get into places like Carmel and Zionsville, which are definitely on people's radar, that price of $650,000, $750,000, it's a little bit of a shock. And then what you're actually getting sometimes for that home may not be as much as you thought. And then local buyers, they're really feeling the pinch because generally you're not used to homes that are that expensive. Homes that maybe sold in 1990 for $230,000, they're now selling for $500,000 and $600,000, which is a bit of a shock to locals. You can also get into some commute trade-offs. So as Indy has grown and the suburbs around it have grown, it's spreading out some. And so that means you have some longer commutes, and then you also have a little bit more congestion than maybe what you were anticipating, but it's still, you're not free of it. And you can have some spots that are a little bit sticky, like around I-65 that I just came off of coming from Greenwood. Not that it held me up a lot, but the congestion was a little thicker. And then I-69, as it goes through Fishers and Noblesville, that can definitely get congested. But those aren't the only sticking points around Indy. So it's gotten big enough to where it's something that you have to consider whenever you move further and further out from the core. And then there are some gaps in that lifestyle, all those pieces that we just mentioned. While you might have some more really true walkable, larger parts of a city, Indy doesn't really have huge areas where a real walkable lifestyle, what I mean by real walkable is that you could probably get away with not having a car. I'd say it's pretty difficult in most of Indianapolis and all around Indianapolis to exist without a car. It can be done. The number of places that you can really truly do that, they are pretty minuscule, honestly. So there are places I know that you need to go on a daily basis or a weekly basis. There are a lot of things that can be delivered, but you still are going to struggle a little bit. Places like this, Fountain Square, definitely very walkable. Broad Ripple, very walkable. Walkability to a lot of people means this: I could just go right across the street to barbershop, coffee shop, restaurant, or I want to walk my dog. I just want to walk out the front door and be able to walk a mile, maybe 2, without having to worry about busy roads. Now, places for walkability like that around Indy, I would say almost every single place that exists is going to have at least a certain level of walkability like that. If you're coming from a real walkable hub like in Washington, D.C., which definitely has some really cool spots for that, and other cities too, you might be disappointed when you see how narrow your choices are for a place where you don't have to depend on a car around here. And then that next thing is just the stress of buying something from out of state. A lot of times out-of-state buyers, they have to make decisions very quickly, and I know that can be unnerving, especially when you don't know an area really all that well. But we could do virtual tours, and I've done so many virtual tours over the years. All paperwork can be done remotely and electronic. Even closing can be done remotely and electronic. We've done this with people overseas, and not just in Europe, but places like Australia. So they might actually be on a different day than we're on. But that can create a lot of pressure and a lot of unease when you're not here physically. And we've worked with buyers that have actually never been here physically. They're still going to feel a little pressure and a considerable amount of unease when they're not here physically. So we can say that Indy's buyer pipeline, it is fueled by some of those big coastal metros that we find east to west, but a majority of the buyers in and around Indianapolis are still local. And suburbs like Carmel, Zionsville, Westfield, they do still dominate a lot of those moves and a lot of the interest that we find. So of course they're going to command a lot of the prices too. But a majority of those buyers looking in and around Indy, they're looking for the lifestyle that places like that are going to offer, which would be family friendly, safe, great schools, all of the things that we've talked about here in this video. But those walkable, creative, culturally rich type of neighborhoods like Fountain Square, Meridian Kessler, Broad Ripple, those all are still in demand. They're in demand for those young professionals, people that want that little bit of walkability that you've got in some places like this. Those places are probably always going to hold value because they're popular. And that of course means they can also be some of the more expensive places to live in the city, but some people are willing to make that kind of trade-off for that lifestyle. They're willing to trade square footage, they're willing to trade maintenance, where they might have to maintain a house, and something that's a little bit older because outside of their house and where they go and what they have near them is more important. Now, every area offers something a little bit different, whether it's prestige, whether it's culture, walkability, schools. The challenge is trying to find the right balance for the majority of what you want to do in your lifestyle. And there will always be, unfortunately, trade-offs in order to get to that point. So at the end of the day, really, it's about finding the place that fits your lifestyle the best and not exactly the perfect home. Location and lifestyle are the things that you live, absolutely live. And the home, it comes second. The location ends up either wearing you out or energizing you. So the home itself, it'll blend into exactly what that is that you need. Buying in Indianapolis, it can feel overwhelming. You've got limited inventory, you've got rising home prices, and some of the trade-offs that you're gonna have to make with where it is that you end up and the lifestyle that you're seeking. So it's easy to waste time chasing the wrong homes because they're in a completely different place than what you probably should be in. You'll end up wasting a tremendous amount of energy and time doing that. But that's exactly what I and my team do. We help match people up with the lifestyle that's going to fit them the best based on what it is that they really want. And we do this week after week and have done this with literally hundreds of families over the years. So whether Indianapolis is something that's on your radar for the future or it's a place that you know you're moving to right now, then feel free to reach out. All of our contact information is in the description below, or you can find it right here on this screen. But if you're further out and want to know more about Indy, then check out the next videos that are popping up on your screen now, and we'll catch you in the next one.